Over the last week, Congress President Rahul Gandhi has been on an interview spree. Simultaneously, the party has also fielded former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh for two prominent interviews. What's the rationale in doing an English media blitz after 4 of 7 phases of voting have already wound up? To talk about that, we have with us Congress spokesperson Sanjay Jha, senior journalist Anita Katyal and Madhavan Narayanan, both of whom have written and analyzed the Congress strategy over the last few months. First to you, Sanjay Jha, did the timing of these interviews, specifically the 3-4 done in the last 5 days, have anything to do with the UN development on Masood Azhar? Did the party want to get ahead of the BJP seizing the security narrative yet again?
Well, first and foremost, Mr. Gandhi has given over 100 press conferences over the last couple of years. So he has been extremely accessible to the media. We have expressed our views on everything ranging from the Rafale corruption down to the destruction of the institutions of governance, talking about the job crisis in particular, rural distress, which has been a very, very serious challenge for the farmer community in India, the Rafale scam, the Chaukidar Chor Hai slogan, and therefore I think that process continues. Let me just make this point here that the world's largest democracy has a prime minister who hasn't held a single press conference. Now, yes, Mr. Gandhi during his election campaign has been talking to the print media, to the TV channels and everybody. But if you look at it, it's been very evenly distributed. Now, what has happened is that obviously when you are in this campaign spree, you find as much time as possible to also interact with, all the critical sections of the mass media or the mainstream media. That's exactly what he's done. And we believe that by the end of the 4th phase of the election, it is very evident that the BJP or the NDA is losing, and therefore we want to kind of further accentuate the momentum in our favor by reaching out and increasing our public outreach, and that's exactly what's going on. So even as Mr. Gandhi is giving his sound bites and giving lengthy interviews to the Indian Express, to the Hindustan Times, to Hindu and all the other TV channels, let me tell you, the door-to-door campaign, the sabhas, the gatherings, the public speeches have all been done not just by Mr. Gandhi but by other leaders who are contesting and our star campaigners. So it's a very concerted, a very well organized and what I call is a systematic campaign, and we hope that along with our social media strategy that is going to pay huge dividends. We are very confident of that.
Okay, so since you said part of the point was to take what the party was getting as the takeaway from the first 4 phases out to people, in that I'm going to ask this: by the end of phase 4, Chennai had voted, Hyderabad had voted, Bengaluru had voted, Mumbai had voted. So is this a message not as much for voters as to potential allies, Mr. Jha?
No, you've got to understand this.
The only reason I mention these cities is because they're major English media markets. That's the only reason why I identified those cities, that's all.
No, the point I'm making is that in the first 4 phases, there have been almost 350 odd seats that were fought out.
Right.
And I think, at that point of time, it was, frankly, if you look at the distribution, it was all over the country. So Mr. Gandhi, being the principal campaigner, has been, frankly, crisscrossing the entire country. And unlike Narendra Modi, he does not have the advantage of, the kind of infrastructure and the money power of flying at his short notice wherever he goes. So I think we have managed it remarkably well. I want to let you know that NAI, one of the schemes that we announced as part of our manifesto, has become a huge success, largely on account of the fact that Mr. Gandhi has driven that in his propaganda, in his entire public relations, in his conversations, and in his ability to actually reach out to the grassroots level. And then our other campaigners have taken it down to the last mile. So it's a very complex, it's a humongous effort, I can tell you that. It's not easy. I'm sure Mr. Gandhi has not slept more than a couple of hours every night, but he's doing a tremendous job.
I'll come to Nyaya in just a bit. To Anita Katyal next, and you've done a piece a few weeks back on how the Congress was attempting to take the narrative back from national security from the BJP. I want to get to one particular sequence of events. Priyanka Gandhi's announcement as General Secretary of the Indian National Congress was announced on the 23rd of January, but there was no launch event until the 14th of Feb. and that had to be suspended in light of the Pulwama attacks. Was that period in between a lost period for the Congress, according to you?
You see, as far as the Pulwama and Balakot are concerned, I think the Congress had no choice.
No, I'm saying before that, between the second half of Jan and the second week of Feb. From the point they announced her to the point where they had to suspend her public announcement.
No, I wouldn't say that that was the delay kind of made any difference. I would say the announcement of Priyanka Gandhi as General Secretary, even in January, was very late.
Okay.
You know, if she had to come into the field, she should have come in much, much earlier. Because, you know, if she's going to UP, and UP is a state where Congress is really a marginal and a bit player over there. And so you have to really work very hard. The party doesn't have any cadres. It doesn't have a narrative. It doesn't have a social base. So to kind of work around that, you need much more time. And I think I wouldn't say that time was lost because, from Jan to Feb she didn't. I think even Jan was late.
Okay.
She should have come in much, much earlier, to work in a state where where the Congress is really a marginal player, a bit player, where it has no presence. For the last 30 odd years, it's been nowhere on the political scene. So if you really want to revive the party and you want to build the cadre, you need several, just not 2-3 months. You need at least a year to do that.
Madhavan Narayanan, on the 12th of March, you had the Congress Working Committee meeting that happened in Gujarat. That's probably where Priyanka Gandhi made her first public speech after her appointment. At that time, on a show on Bloomberg Quint, you questioned the rationale of a launch in Gujarat for a General Secretary for East UP. 2 months, month and a half, 2 months down, do you see more cohesion in the narrative that the Congress and the media strategy of the Congress for the last month and a half, 2 months?
That's a very good question, Kaushik. I see a lot of cohesion, certainly, but it does not, it's not state specific.
Okay.
It is essentially powered by Nyay, as I see it. It's become the intel inside of the Congress campaign. They suddenly seem to have got something to go to the people with, other than saying Chaukidar Chor hai kind of stuff. So I call it the 3I approach. You have issues, you have interest groups, and you have initiatives. So if you're talking about issues, the Congress didn't have much to promise till Nyay happened.
Okay.
And Nyay is definitely a bold move, and therefore the manifesto, is a pretty well-crafted one, because they realize that if they want to be in the game, it's not merely enough to talk about Modi being bad or demonetization being goofed up. They had to have something, positive. Having said that, however, the interest group part of the election campaign is pretty weak for Congress in states like UP, because the caste kind of equation is gone. Congress doesn't have the old loyalists of either the Dalits or the Muslims voting for it. The upper caste is substantially as the BJP tilts now, and therefore definitely Congress has a challenge in terms of some of the ground level issues on that. But there's certainly much more inspiration. And that leaves us with the question of, has Priyanka Gandhi worked? My expectation was a little higher. Can't say it's not working, but I think it's part of the Congress strategy to always keep Priyanka more as a mascot and an icon, rather than an organizer. So if you're talking about Priyanka Gandhi, the mascot, she's doing pretty well. She's giving interviews, and there's a certain visual buzz that has been created around her. But on the other hand, as an organizer, and if you're looking at the specifics of a region like East UP, I would say Congress is underperformed. The situation is pretty fluid. I would have expected Congress to show a bit more of not only what Anita referred to as some kind of action. It would have also meant, it's not rocket science really, it would have meant tying up some more local parties. It's a very tough tug of war, because the most backward castes are a very tough group to challenge. Now you're entering the territory of how to deal with India's post-Mandal politics, as I call it. That's a separate story, actually.
Okay, I want to come to Sanjay Jha on Nyaya, but just before that, I'll flip the question around on her as a mascot and her as an organizer in Eastern UP, Madhavan, on something you had pointed out a couple of weeks back, that there had been an attempt to wean away O.P. Rajbhat away from the NDA, something that is perhaps fructified as of today. If that was the case, then this whole will she, won't she out of Varanasi as a Lok Sabha seat, was that something that left the party, that gave the party of looking confused, or was that something that was done with a deliberate plan in mind just to stay in the news and a buzz for a day?
Well, let me tell you, I think as Mr. Rahul Gandhi himself, I think, told a TV channel that we may have considered that, but he was very clear in his head that given the fact that we believe there are a lot of seats where we are likely to win them, it was important that Priyanka Gandhi Vadra was available for, aggressive campaigning. She has been drawing sizable crowds. Her chemistry or her affinity with people and with various groups of people has been simply phenomenal. Those who have seen her campaigning, and some of us who have worked with her, can tell you that she's got a very pleasant and a very likable demeanor, and the crowd truly kind of enjoys dealing with a political personality who is accessible, friendly, and has a very pleasant disposition about her. And I think these are things that in today's highly vicious and extremely what I call as a vile, vituperative politics is a rarity. And it's working for us magically at the ground level. Also, I want to add that, while we want to maximize our number of seats in the Lok Sabha right now, and I'm sure we will, the fact is that we also have a medium-term strategy of getting our, groundswell and our organizational strength, which I agree with both the panelists has not been too good for us in the past, but we are building up. In politics, you don't look back, you have to look to the future. Sure, we have made mistakes. I'm not going to even pussyfoot around that, but we are building up for 2022. We believe Uttar Pradesh has got terrible governance under Yogi Adityanath. He has taken the state to a criminal jungle Raj kind of a system, and people will be looking for a change for sure. And we want to be the alternative in 2022. So as far as Priyanka Gandhi Vadra is concerned, let me tell you, she is a very powerful asset for the party, even in Maharashtra where I live, and down south of India, where she hasn't gone so far. The impact, the ramification of her sheer political presence has been very positive for the party. You mentioned at the very outset, why did she start from Gujarat? You see, we started from Gujarat because I think the larger message we wanted to convey is that Gujarat is where Mahatma Gandhi and Sardar Patel were from. They are extremely formidable Congress leaders, internationally renowned. And we see that the kind of damage that Narendra Modi and Shah have done to, I think, the whole idea of India as espoused by Mahatma Gandhi needs to be restored. Therefore, it was a symbolic message, and therefore all our leaders started from Gujarat. But end of day, I think she is fighting a brilliant campaign.
I wanted to come to you very quickly on Nyaya, and I wanted to get a sense of the understanding in the party between the 26th of Feb and the 25th of March that Nyaya was launched. Was that, in hindsight, too long a period of time to wait to arrest the narrative and change it with your trump card? Mr. Jha, what was the thinking in that 1 month?
Well, let me tell you, there are divergent views. There are people within the party who felt that we should have just continued in our aggressive posture and not taken even a slight hiatus despite what happened at Pulwama or Balakot. But, Mr. Gandhi being, an extremely dignified political leader, he, I think, took his own call. He said, listen, these are times when you need to be extremely, shall we say, statesman-like. And I think he delivered on that promise. I don't think, I know my party very well. We would not have actually questioned Narendra Modi or the surgical strikes if these guys had not been so, in my opinion, pedestrian and pathetic and politicking with the armed forces. I mean, look at the levels to which our political discourse has gone, that Modi has to now actually call the previous cross-border surgical strikes or, whatever counter-attacks we did as video games. So he's willing to humiliate everybody. He's He's willing to challenge Lieutenant General D.S. Huda, who led the Uri surgical strike. He's willing to challenge General Vikram Singh. I saw a video of one of the prominent defense people who actually led one of the strikes, who was appalled that Modi had called it a video game. But these are the times we live in. We have to fight it out. But the Congress in its DNA believes that the national security is something that obviously is a critical issue, but no politician should try and hijack it ever. I can promise you this: if we win this election, I'm sure we will never make political capital out of what we believe is a military endeavor. The success should be there with people who actually fight the wars.
If that is to happen, Mr. Jha, that is something I expect and I hope the party is a promise that the party would aim to keep. I just want to get very quickly to two other points. Anita Katyal, the Congress manifesto did enjoy a greater buzz than that of the ruling party, perhaps because the ruling party for the last 5 years has advertised each of its schemes. How much of a bump did that give the Congress, and has that been something they've been able to carry through to different parts of the country in each round?
I agree with you that the manifesto, especially its flagship program, Nyay, or that 72,000 for the poorest needy, 20% needy, did kind of create a buzz, especially in the media. And a lot of people, of course, also there were a lot of critical noises about it, as the questions were asked as to how was it ever going to implement it, where was the money going to come from. So there was a lot of discussion and analysis on TV and the print media and all around. But I'm afraid I really have to say that it's a good program. It's something which should have been the selling point, and it is the selling point of the Congress. But unfortunately, they have not been able to take the message down. The cadres have not been able to take the message down to the people. I mean, if you go out into the field, you will see a lot of people still don't know, are unaware about this program. And that, I think, is primarily because the Congress organizational strength, as even Sanjay Jha has admitted, has weakened over a period of time, and that is probably hurting it the most in carrying this message forward to the people. And secondly, I think it's the communication skills. Even Rahul Gandhi, although he has improved tremendously over a period of time, but the fact is that he's still no match to Narendra Modi. He still remains a very powerful orator. And he has a way with words, and he has a way with connecting with the people. So, so their message of nationalism and the nationalist agenda which they are going with to the people is resonating far more, is being talked about far more. Unfortunately, that is the truth, and I think Congress should realize that. That's exactly what's happening on the ground.
Madhavan, you had very recently, the former Congress President Sonia Gandhi reminding the Prime Minister of the outcome of 2004. There is when she said that, there is one thing that struck me. Some of the media post-op of the election of 2004 went along the lines of Bharat wasn't shining even if the BJP thought India was. Well, in that election, the BJP nearly got wiped out of all of India's major cities. Is there a sense that's coming through that even Mr. Gandhi's rallies and the way that's been scheduled across major cities across this country, that if jobs is the major argument of the challenging party right now, shouldn't that be made on the ground, and shouldn't it come from the party chief, or is it better coming off by itself from people voting for just an alternative and then presenting who is being put forth as to lead it?
No, I wouldn't know, Kaushik, whether, I wouldn't agree with the fact that Rahul Gandhi is not sending the message. I think I've been listening to radio advertisements, watching TV ads, watching Rahul Gandhi's interviews, seeing the posters and his speeches. I don't think there is anything lacking from the point of view of, to use a military analogy, what I call the air cover. But as Anita said, like in any war, like in Kargil war, you might bomb enemy targets, but then you need hand-to-hand combat at the ground level to take positions. You need an infantry. And maybe Congress is slightly lacking there, but I wouldn't be emphasizing that too much, because the fact is that we now have a tremendous penetration of smartphones and TV across the country, and the literacy levels have gone up. So I wouldn't think that is as much a major issue. It all depends on how much weightage you would assign to some of the conversion factors and what I call the last mile factors in the voting patterns. Let me bring your attention to voting today. It's a severe heat wave across, and in Rajasthan and in UP and in Bihar, turnout is pretty low. So neither Mr. Modi nor Rahul Gandhi have done enough in their campaign to make people come out and vote. So whether it is the Chowkidar factor or the Nyay factor, people are still being people. And you mentioned the right thing that, and there is something that escaped even my attention, that even urban India didn't really fall for the India Shining campaign in 2004. So people have their own native wisdom. And I would never underestimate the native wisdom of Indians. And so the real issue is something that Anita Katyal touched upon very in a passing sort of a way, but which I think is very, very deep, which is that it's not about what media and you and I think about issues being significant or not. Election voting is a composite psychological or a socio-psychological phenomenon in which various kinds of anxieties and hopes, to use a mathematical kind of a concept, it's a vector sum. You know, it's not as if people are not concerned about national security. It's not as if people are not concerned about corruption or caste or their own individual aspirations. People take what in Hindi they call a mota-moti view. And in that, I think Mr. Modi has, thanks to his oratory and the sheer energy of the organizational force, there is something, you know, a bit of a, not a clincher, but an advantage factor there. But let me draw your attention to Ram Madhav, General Secretary of the BJP, and a senior RSS hand saying today that BJP may not get a majority on its own. This is flying in the face of what Amit Shah has been saying. So it's not as if the party is speaking with one voice. And so let's not fall, even the party itself is not falling for the hype.
That Ram Madhav interview to Bloomberg News editor-in-chief John Micklethwaite, very interestingly, he says 271 would be something he would be happy with. So he says stops one short of the majority number. I want to wind this up with Sanjay Jha and the question that Madhavan raised in part. That is as much as the air power is concerned with the messaging and the narrative. Does the party have the ground game, Mr. Jha, to convert either disappointed voters from 5 years ago who might consider switching right now, and voters that are of the parties to the booth? Does it have the apparatus in the states that the BJP, in the rounds of the second half of this election that the BJP swept, to convert some of that into votes for itself, take people to the booth and make sure those votes are locked in? Is that something you're confident about as much as the narrative that you feel optimistic about?
You know, first I would just like to tell you that I want to thank both my panelists and yourself, because I'm not used to such a civilized political conversation during the election period. But to answer your question, you know, this is a very asymmetrical election. The BJP has probably 95% of the entire financial resources, and we are all basically just by our bootstraps. But you know what has been good for the Congress party is that I think we have managed to live within these limitations in a great number of ways. You know, when you are driven to the wall, you find a method, you find a way to, you know, kind of get your story right. I think on social media, for all the number of followers Narendra Modi has and Jaitley and other people have, and it's actually Rahul Gandhi who's actually set the narrative. You know, I always believe that the one who sets the agenda wins the elections. And if you really follow over the last 6 months, Rahul Gandhi has been setting the agenda. And it's not just about Rafale, it's about several issues. I believe that the BJP, in attacking him relentlessly, has made him the agenda. So we are not complaining about that.
I was hoping to get a sense of the ground game from you, not as much as the messaging. I just wanted to close this on your sense of the ground game of the party to get the voter out to cast that vote.
Well, you know, I do believe that at the end of the day, if you look at the voting percentages, don't forget 2014 was an aberration. It was a black swan election. So the voting percentages were high because people just fell for that one, what they believed was this Modi wave, and it was in a great number of ways manufactured by large sections of the mainstream media. If the voting percentage even in this election is not really going down much, right? It's just percentage points in several states. I haven't seen today's numbers. It tells you that there is no voter apathy. There may be certain states having a divergence, but overall, like for example, in Mumbai where I live, there was a record voting. You know, after a lot of people thought it was down, it was actually up. It was the highest in 30 years, and it's been hot in Mumbai too. So I do believe that end of day, India's electorate, and I completely agree with what I think Mr. Madhavan mentioned, that the Indian citizen is an extremely aware, sharp, discerning, silent, and intelligent voter. And, you know, they will have taken a call. And we are very confident that no matter the hype on hyper-nationalism and this muscular approach, you know, the kind of language which has been used, I think, has been perhaps a message to the people of India. Is this what you want to live with? You know, the humiliation of Mr. Rajiv Gandhi by the Prime Minister, calling him a Bhrashtachari #1 at the time of his death, technically, legally wrong and morally repugnant. I don't think the people of India are liking that. And I do believe that, you know, the rhetoric and the flourish may be there. Narendra Modi is a very flamboyant speaker, but I think Mr. Rahul Gandhi has got content. I think content at the end of the day is king.
Madhavan, very quickly, you wanted to make a point?
Yeah, I just wanted to probably end it on a funny note that Sanjay Jha just said that the 2014 was a black swan election, and with a high turnout that obviously voted in Modi. But I thought I would better call it the Great White Hope turned out to be a black swan in some ways. And to that extent, right now, Congress is turning pink and the BJP is turning saffron. So we shall end on that colorful note, I suppose.
Okay, fair enough. On that note, Anita Katyal, Madhavan Narayanan, Sanjay Jha, thank you very much for joining us. We hope between now and the last phase of voting, we'll perhaps look at how this narrative over the last couple of months has been shaped by the ruling party as well. So we will try and get you that. Until then, keep watching Bloomberg Quint. Thank you.